Hello hockey fans and welcome back to another video. On April 14th, 2022, Mississauga Senators forward Michael Misa was granted exceptional status to the OHL. Thanks to his 43 points in 27 regular season games and his 21 points in 7 OHL Cup games, Misa became just the 8th player in CHL history to ever receive this honour. By gaining exceptional status, Misa is eligible to be drafted in the 2022 OHL priority selection, and he is able to compete in Major Junior Hockey a year earlier than the rest of his age group at just 15 years old. And given that he scored at well over a point per game pace for the entire season, and given that he broke a record that was previously held by Connor McDavid, I can certainly understand why. Since only a handful of players have been granted this honour since the rule was introduced in 2005, exceptional status is typically reserved for the best of the best. In fact, many players who have received this status have gone on to become NHL superstars or are projected to follow suit over the next few years. So whilst it's a tremendous honour for any player to receive, it comes with some pretty high expectations. So who has been granted exceptional status, how did they perform at the major junior level, and how have their careers panned out in the years that followed? Well, let's take a look at all 7 of these players and find out, shall we? So in today's video, join me as we explore the Exceptional Status Club. We'll start with the very first player to ever receive this honour, John Tavares. Now at 14 years old, Tavares produced one hell of a productive season. Whether it was his 91 goals and 158 points with the Toronto Marlboros under-16 team, his 28 points in 20 games with the Milton Icehawks, or his 8 points in 5 games during the OHL Cup, the teenager had clearly figured out how to put the puck in the back of the net. Since he had dominated his age group in every competition that year, Tavares submitted a petition to the OHL to see if he could join the league a year early. Though they had never allowed a 14-year-old to be drafted into their ranks, the OHL was so impressed by the youngster's maturity both on and off the ice that they granted him exceptional status, a new rule which allowed Tavares to join the OHL a year early and be drafted a whole season before anyone else in his age group. So exceptional status, a rule that has been used by some of the greatest young talent that the sport has ever seen, and a ruling that continues to be used to this very day, was brought into existence thanks to John Tavares. The guy was so good at hockey and so far ahead of his own age group that the OHL literally rewrote their rulebook just so he could join a year early. If that doesn't speak volumes to the type of kid Tavares was, I don't know what does, folks. It's also worth mentioning that the Canadian Hockey League, the governing body of all 3 major junior leagues in North America, would gain approval from Hockey Canada to implement the exceptional status rule in their other 2 leagues, the Western Hockey League and the Quebec Major Junior League, shortly after Tavares had joined the OHL. So not only did Tavares change one league, he had helped implement a new rule across the entire major junior system. Now that's how you start your career with a bang, folks. While Tavares was head and shoulders above his contemporaries on the ice, it's important to mention that his off-ice characteristics were equally taken into consideration when making this ruling. After all, the OHL were mindful of the athletic, emotional and academic challenges if a 15-year-old competed at the major junior level, so the league conducted a number of interviews with Tavares himself in order to ensure that he possessed the maturity and the strength of character to handle the pressure of playing 16 to 20-year-olds on a nightly basis. It's nice to see a league doing their due diligence and ensuring that a youngster would be able to handle himself before making a decision. As a 14-year-old, there are plenty of things going on in your life outside of hockey, so making sure a player can tackle every element of the next step, both on and off the ice, is extremely vital to their long-term success, both in their hockey career and in their life in general. I imagine that these off-ice concerns are the primary reason why so few players have been granted this status over the years. After all, being a great hockey player is one thing, but handling the sky-high expectations and the increased media attention is a completely different challenge. But I digress. Having been granted exceptional status, Tavares became eligible for the 2005 OHL priority selection, where he was taken first overall by the Oshawa Generals. Having become the youngest player to be drafted into the OHL and having joined the Generals for the 05-06 season, Tavares would prove that the right decision had been made, as the 15-year-old finished his rookie year with an impressive 45 goals and 77 points in just 65 regular season games. Not only would he lead all rookies in goals and earn a place on the OHL's first all-rookie team, Tavares would be named both the OHL and the CHL Rookie of the Year. Not bad for the youngest player in the league, folks? From there, Tavares would spend the next 3 seasons in the OHL, score a whopping 356 points in just 182 games, and earn a plethora of awards, including OHL MVP, CHL Player of the Year, and OHL Top Scorer amongst many others. After being traded to the London Knights midway through the 08-09 season, and after scoring 71 points in 38 total games with the team, Tavares became eligible for the 2009 NHL entry draft. Since he had more than lived up to the hype following his exceptional status, and since he had dominated his contemporaries every single year, the 18-year-old was regarded as the top prospect of his draft class by a pretty notable margin. This culminated in Tavares being drafted first overall by the New York Islanders, and given his performance in the years that followed, this choice was an absolute slam dunk. Since then, Tavares has spent the last 13 seasons in the NHL, split between the Islanders and the Toronto Maple Leafs, has posted 12 20-goal seasons, 5 30-goal seasons, and 6 70-point seasons, en route to registering 390 goals and 891 points in 943 games at the time of this recording. If all of that wasn't impressive enough though, Tavares is also a 6-time All-Star, was named to the 2010 All-Rookie team, and secured a spot on the 2015 First All-Star team too. So yeah, I think the whole exceptional status thing worked out pretty well in the long run, don't you? Next up, we have the second player to ever receive exceptional status, Aaron Ekblad. Now, Ekblad may be one of the only defensemen to have ever received this honour, but boy did he earn it and then some. After all, not only did he score 34 points in 34 regular season games and 21 points in 18 playoff games with the Sun County Panthers under-16 team as a 14-year-old, Ekblad also served as the captain of the roster and led the team to an Alliance Championship, just in case his scoring numbers weren't impressive enough. Once the 10-11 season concluded and the Panthers took home the championship, Ekblad's camp submitted an application to the OHL to be granted exceptional status for the 11-12 season, and after a 6-week review by Hockey Canada, Ekblad's request was unanimously approved. So over half a decade after Tavares' application, Ekblad became the first defenseman to ever receive exceptional status. Seems like it was the right decision given his outstanding year prior. Having become eligible to be drafted in the 2011 priority selection, Ekblad was taken first overall by the Barrie Colts, and though he wouldn't register the dominant scoring numbers that Tavares did, the 15-year-old would still produce an impressive rookie season, as he was named the OHL's Rookie of the Year thanks to his 29 points and -5 rating in 63 regular season games. From there, Ekblad would spend the next 2 seasons with the Colts, take his game to even greater heights, and prove that the right choice had been made, as he scored 87 points in 112 regular season games, 23 points in 31 playoff games, and won several awards too, including the 2014 Defenseman of the Year award and a place on the OHL's first All-Star team. Oh, and he also received top honours in a variety of categories during a 2014 coaches poll, and registered a +36 rating during this span, which is rather impressive in a high-scoring league like the OHL. After scoring 53 points in 58 games during the 13-14 season, and having worn the C on his jersey as the captain of the team, Ekblad became eligible for the 2014 NHL entry draft, and given his outstanding major junior career, the defenseman was expected to be one of the top selections at the event. Just like Tavares before him, Ekblad would end up being the cream of the crop, as he was selected first overall by the Florida Panthers. Since then, Ekblad has spent the last 8 seasons playing exclusively with the Panthers, where he has developed into an exceptional NHL defenseman. Not only has he been named a two-time All-Star and won the 2015 Calder Trophy as Rookie of the Year, Ekblad has registered 3 15-goal seasons and 6 35-point seasons, en route to scoring 97 goals and 291 points in 554 games at the time of this recording. If all of that wasn't impressive enough though, Ekblad has posted a plus 72 rating during this span and has scored 57 points in 61 games during the current 21-22 season, so he's clearly taken the next step in his game and has developed into a top blue liner in the show. So once again, it seems like exceptional status worked out pretty well in the long run. Moving on to one of, if not the greatest player to ever be granted exceptional status, Connor McDavid. Now as a 14-year-old, Connor McDavid was practically rewriting the youth hockey record books. After all, the forward scored 77 points in just 33 games with the Toronto Marlboros under-16 team, 209 points in 88 games with the Marlboros AAA team, while also adding 19 points in 7 games during the OHL Cup. The kid was the definition of dominant. McDavid's outstanding production across every competition that year led his camp to apply for exceptional status to the OHL, and after passing a variety of evaluations, he was granted his request shortly after. Having become just the third player in CHL history to ever receive this honour, McDavid entered the 2012 OHL priority selection, where he followed in the footsteps of the two players before him by being drafted first overall, this time by the Erie Otters. From there, the 15-year-old would register quite the impressive rookie season, as he potted 25 goals and 66 points in 63 OHL games. Though he would fail to capture CHL Rookie of the Year, and he would finish second in scoring by OHL rookies, McDavid would set new franchise records for the most assists and points by an Otters rookie, be named the OHL Rookie of the Year, and earn a place on the league's first All-Star team too. Sounds like a successful year to me, folks. Despite missing out on several awards during his debut season, the next few years would see McDavid explode onto the scene and establish himself as one of the most dominant players in major junior hockey. Thanks to scoring an incredible 72 goals and 219 points in just 104 regular season games, as well as 68 points in 34 playoff games during this span, McDavid would take home his fair share of silverware, as he won an MVP award, a playoff MVP award, and CHL Player of the Year, as well as a number of Scholastic Player of the Year awards amongst many others. In fact, McDavid holds the record for the most individual awards given to an OHL player with 5, so he clearly lived up to the hype. Once the 14-15 season had come to an end, and having scored 120 points in just 47 games that year, McDavid would enter the 2015 NHL draft as a generational talent and the undisputed first overall pick. Once the opening round had concluded on June 26th, these predictions would finally become a reality, as McDavid was taken first overall by the Edmonton Oilers. Though he would become the third exceptional player to be drafted first overall to the NHL, the forward's career in the show has stood head and shoulders above his contemporaries. During his first 7 seasons in the league, McDavid has scored at over a point per game pace every single year, has registered 3 40-goal seasons and 5 100-point seasons, en route to notching 237 goals and 684 points in just 481 games at the time of this recording. Not only that, McDavid has also got his hands on plenty of individual awards during this span, as he has been named a 5-time All-Star, earned 4 first All-Star team berths, has won 2 Hart trophies, 3 Art Ross trophies, and 3 Ted Lindsay awards too. In fact, since he has registered 42 goals and 110 points in 74 games so far this season, it's incredibly likely that McDavid will add another trophy or 2 by the end of the year. However, the one award he is still missing is the all-important Stanley Cup. So will he finally be able to get his hands on a championship during the upcoming 2022 Stanley Cup playoffs? The Oilers have all but clinched a berth in the postseason by this point, so I guess we'll have to wait and see. Next up, we have one of the most controversial members of this group, Sean Day. Now, Day's production during his final year of youth hockey was far more modest than the three exceptional players before him. That said, the defenseman still registered respectable stats as a 14-year-old, as he scored 11 points in 25 games with the CompuWare Under-16 team, while also notching 35 points in 63 games with their AAA team that same year. However, thanks to him physically maturing much sooner than the rest of his age group, Day looked like a man amongst boys, as his newfound stature, coupled with his impressive skating ability and his raw talent, meant that he really stood out from the crowd and dominated his contemporaries on both sides of the puck. Once the 12-13 season had concluded, and having seemingly outgrown his age group, Day submitted an application to receive exceptional status to the OHL. While his application was approved and he became the fourth player to ever receive the honour, Day's status was far more questionable than the group's previous three members. In fact, a number of OHL teams felt that Day wasn't worthy of the honour, as his hockey sense and his overall game were nowhere near the same level as the exceptional players before him. Despite these protests, Day would be granted exceptional status and was eligible to be drafted in the 2013 OHL priority selection. However, the questions surrounding his on-ice play and the ongoing debate around his worthiness of the honour meant that Day would become the first exceptional player to not be taken with the number 1 pick, as he was drafted 4th overall by the Mississauga Steelheads. From there, Day would produce the most underwhelming rookie season of any exceptional player to date, as the defenseman potted just 6 goals and 16 points in 60 OHL games. Sure, point production isn't everything, especially for a defenseman, but considering Day also registered a -35 rating, his debut year didn't quite go to plan. Unfortunately, Day would continue to miss the mark for the rest of his major junior career, as he scored 58 points in 118 regular season games and posted a -40 rating. Now, in Day's defence, he did experience some pretty tragic events off the ice, which I've explored in great detail in a previous video, but still, this performance clearly wasn't good enough for a player who was granted exceptional status. Once the 15-16 season had concluded, and having scored just 22 points in 57 games with the Steelheads, Day would become eligible for the 2016 NHL entry draft. However, since he had produced mediocre numbers over the last 3 seasons, and since he hadn't reached the same level as the exceptional players before him, Day would become the first of this group to not be drafted number 1. Instead, the defenseman would fall all the way to the 3rd round, where he was taken 81st overall by the New York Rangers. Talk about a fall from grace. Unfortunately for both the player and his new organisation, things wouldn't get much better for Day in the several years that followed. After being taken by the Rangers, Day would return to the OHL and play the next 2 years as an overager, bounce between 3 different teams and score 84 points in 113 games, before finally turning pro for the 18-19 season. From there, Day would officially join the Rangers organisation, but would be unable to secure a roster spot in the show, as he would ply his trade in the minor leagues instead. In fact, Day would even spend considerable time in the ECHL during this span, as he scored 18 points in 62 AHL games, along with 25 points in 55 ECHL games. Not the greatest start for a guy who was granted exceptional status, folks? Once the 2019-20 season had reached its premature end and having failed to take his game to the next level, the Rangers decided that it was time to sever ties with their former draft pick, as they terminated Day's contract on May 30th, 2020. After several months had passed, the defenseman would secure a new deal elsewhere in the league, as he signed a 1-year, 2-way contract with the Tampa Bay Lightning on July 17th, 2020. Thanks to his fresh start and a change of scenery, Day was able to produce somewhat of a resurgence during the 2021 season, as he scored 15 points in 29 AHL games with Tampa's minor league affiliate, the Syracuse Crunch. In fact, this performance would earn Day a 1-year extension with the team, keeping him within the Lightning organisation for the current 21-22 season. Since then, Sean Day is still a member of the Lightning organisation and has picked up right where he left off during his rebound year prior. Not only has he scored 8 goals and 39 points in 66 AHL games with the Crunch so far this year, he has also made his very first appearance in the show, as he was called up to the Lightning roster on December 28, 2021, and made his NHL debut against the Montreal Canadiens. In fact, Day would end up playing 2 NHL games this year, but he would go scoreless and register a -2 rating during that span. Not the greatest performance, of course, but considering where his career was heading several years ago, he certainly appears to be rising from the ashes. I don't know about you guys, but I hope that Day continues to make great strides forward over the next few years. After all, the guy's only 24 years old. He still has plenty of time to carve out a respectable career in the sport. Moving on, we have the first and only member of the club from the QMJHL, Joe Veleno. During his final year of AAA hockey, Veleno would put up impressive numbers against his fellow age group. After all, not only would he register 52 points in just 41 games with the Lake St. Louis Lions, the 14-year-old would also add 10 points in 6 games and 5 points in 5 games while representing Team Quebec in a pair of tournaments too. Once the 14-15 season had come to an end, and having clearly held his own against the best players of his province, Veleno's camp submitted a request to be granted exceptional status to the QMJHL. However, Veleno's application hit several roadblocks along the way, as Hockey Canada originally denied his request since he had submitted his application after the CHL's deadline. That said, this decision would eventually be reversed several weeks later, as Veleno was granted exceptional status on June 4th, 2015. And who said Major Junior Hockey isn't dramatic? Having become the 5th player to be granted exceptional status, and having become the first 15-year-old to be eligible for the QMJHL draft, Veleno was instantly regarded as one of the top picks available at the 2015 event. Though his immediate predecessor hadn't been selected first overall, and his subsequent performance had made many people question whether exceptional status should ever be granted again, Veleno would help put the status back on track, as he was taken first overall by the St. John Sea Dogs. Shortly after his selection, Veleno would produce an impressive rookie season and prove that the right decision had been made, as he potted 13 goals and 43 points in 63 regular season games, as well as 7 points in 17 playoff games. From there, Veleno would spend the next 2 years split between the Sea Dogs and the Drummondville Voltigeurs. And while he would see notable improvement in his game, he didn't quite reach the same levels as the dominant players before him, as he potted 119 points in 109 games during that span. Having finished the 17-18 season with the Voltigeurs, and having scored 48 points in 33 games with the team, Veleno became eligible to be selected in the 2018 NHL entry draft. Though he would become the 4th exceptional player to be taken in the first round, and he would help the status return to its former glory, Veleno wouldn't be taken at number 1, as he was drafted 30th overall by the Detroit Red Wings. Following his selection, Veleno would return to the Q for the 18-19 season, and though he became the 2nd exceptional pick to not jump straight to the NHL, this would prove to be the right decision. Not only would he register his most productive year yet, thanks to potting 104 points in 59 regular season games, as well as 17 points in 16 playoff games, the 19-year-old was also named to the league's first All-Star team too, so he had a pretty good year for himself, all things considered. Once the 18-19 season had concluded, and having dominated his contemporaries during his first full year in Drummondville, Veleno would turn pro for the following 2019-20 season and join Detroit's AHL affiliate, the Grand Rapids Griffins. After potting 23 points in 54 AHL games during his first year as a pro, and after a 46-game stint with the SHL's Malmo Redhawks during the following 2021 season, the Canadian forward would return to North America before the end of the year, and spend the rest of the season between the majors and the minors, where he potted a single point in 5 NHL games and 3 points in 4 AHL games. Since then, Veleno has spent the current 21-22 season with the Red Wings organisation, where he has seemed to earn a full-time roster spot in the show. After potting 10 points in 11 AHL games to start the year, the 22-year-old has spent the rest of the season in Detroit, where he has potted 14 points in 60 games at the time of this recording. Sure, he hasn't produced the same impressive scoring numbers as the exceptional players before him, but at least he's doing better than Sean Day, right guys? So, will Veleno remain in the NHL and begin to carve out a respectable career in the show, or will he continue to bounce between the majors and the minors and never quite find his place? I guess time will tell. Penultimately, let's take a look at the OHL's last exceptional player before Misa, Shane Wright. Regarded by many as the top prospect in the 2022 NHL entry draft, Wright has certainly lived up to the hype during his major junior career. As a 14-year-old, Wright would produce astonishing numbers against his fellow age group. Whether it was his 150 points in 72 games with the Don Mills Flyers AAA team, 72 points in 33 games with their under-16 team, or his 18 points in 7 OHL Cup games, the guy was head and shoulders above his contemporaries, and that's not even mentioning the other tournaments he played in too. Once the 18-19 season had come to an end, and having dominated every competition that year, Wright would submit an application to receive exceptional status to the OHL. Given his incredible performance on the ice and his notable maturity off it, Hockey Canada quickly granted his request, as he was given exceptional status and was eligible to be selected in the 2019 OHL Priority Selection. Having become the 6th player to receive the honour in the last 14 years, Wright became the latest exceptional player to reach the top, as he was drafted first overall by the Kingston Frontenacs. From there, Wright would quickly prove that he was more than worthy of his exceptional status, as he potted a whopping 39 goals and 66 points in just 58 regular season games. Not only would this performance earn him a place on the OHL's All-Rookie team, it would also help him win a pair of awards, as he was named both the OHL and the CHL Rookie of the Year. Not bad for a 15-year-old, eh, folks? Unfortunately, Wright's sophomore year was over before it even began, as the 2021 OHL season was cancelled completely due to the effects of the global pandemic. Though he could have taken his talents anywhere in the hockey world and spent the year refining his game elsewhere, Wright remained closer to home, as he stayed in Ontario for the entire season. That said, he did join Team Canada for the 2020 Under-18 World Championships and scored 14 points in just 9 games with the team, so he did get some playing time that year and dominated his contemporaries in the process. Once the 21-22 season rolled around and the OHL finally resumed play, Wright returned to the Frontenacs lineup and looked to take the next step in his game after a full season hiatus. Luckily for both the player and his team, the forward wouldn't disappoint, as the newly named captain of the roster potted 32 goals and 94 points in just 63 games, good enough for second on the team in scoring despite being one of the youngest players on the roster. This production, coupled with his plus 23 rating and his impressive locker room leadership, has made Wright the must-have prospect of the upcoming draft, as he has been ranked number 1 by practically every single media outlet ahead of the 2022 NHL entry draft. So, will Shane Wright be taken with the premier pick and become the 4th exceptional player to be drafted first overall? I guess we'll have to wait and see. And finally, we have the most recent exceptional player before Misa, Connor Bedard. Widely regarded as the next generational talent and a top prospect for the 2023 NHL draft, Bedard became the first and only player to be granted exceptional status to the WHL, and here's why. During his final year of youth hockey, Bedard would suit up against players several years older than him and dominate his new opponents in nearly every facet of the game. After all, the 14-year-old would score 43 goals and 84 points in just 36 games with the West Vancouver Academy's under-18 team. Not only would these numbers be the most goals and points across the entire competition, Bedard would also earn the league's MVP award too. Not bad for a kid who's facing players up to 3 years older than him, eh, folks? Once the 2019-20 season had concluded, and having clearly outplayed his competition, Bedard's camp would submit an application to be granted exceptional status to the Western Hockey League. Though the WHL had never awarded this honour in the 15 years since the rule was introduced, Bedard's jaw-dropping play and his sky-high potential left them no choice, as they granted his request and made him eligible for the 2020 WHL Bantam Draft. From there, Bedard would quickly become the cream of the crop, as he was selected first overall by the Regina Pats. Having followed in the footsteps of the exceptional players before him, Bedard's rookie year would be an interesting one to say the least. Since the 2021 WHL season was postponed due to the global pandemic, Bedard would take his talents to Sweden and join HV71, where the 15-year-old scored 2 points in one game with their under-18 team and 4 points in 4 games with their under-20 team, before returning to North America once the WHL season began. Going a point a game against players up to 4 years older than you as a teenager sounds pretty impressive to me, folks. Since then, Connor Bedard has spent the last season and a half playing exclusively with the Regina Pats, where he has established himself as one of the most dominant players in major junior hockey. Not only would he be named WHL Rookie of the Year by potting 28 points in 15 games during the prior 2021 season, the 16-year-old has exploded onto the scoresheet during the current 21-22 season, as the alternate captain of the team potted 51 goals and 100 points in just 62 regular season games. Oh, and he also potted 14 points in 7 games during the 2021 Under-18 World Championships, as well as 5 points in 2 games during the 2022 Under-20 World Championships, so the kid clearly knows how to rise to the occasion. Since he is already a superstar at the major junior level, and since he won't be drafted to the NHL until 2023, it's expected that Bedard will take his game to even greater heights during the upcoming season, and solidify his reputation as the top prospect at the event. Given his incredible production over the last few seasons, his unprecedented WHL career, and his sky-high potential, whoever ends up taking him next year will likely have a franchise-altering player on their hands. And that was a look at the Exceptional Status Club. What do you guys think about the various members of this group? Do you think that each member was deserving of the honour at the time, or do you think hindsight has brought some of these selections into question? Also, where do you think Misa will be selected during the upcoming OHL draft, and how do you think he will fare in the years that follow? Let me know in the comments below, I would love to hear what you guys think, but thank you very much for watching guys, I hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, or watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye! A big thank you to Clayton Hallam, Drew Fawcett, Houston NG, Raquel and Worthless Pieces for helping support this video via Patreon. If you too want to help support the channel a little bit further and get a shout out at the end of every future video, make sure you head over to patreon.com/oddmanrush and become a patron today.